Prepare to dive into a world where two suns blaze, crystal towers shimmer, and a fierce alien official challenges our human hero to a life-or-death duel. In this story, we follow Adam Rayner, an unassuming xenobiologist who never imagined he'd end up battling a vengeful ex-lover for the right to love freely and protect the life growing inside his extraordinary partner, Zalna. From the startling moment she burst in on him in the shower to the tense raid that nearly destroyed their home, every page pulses with danger and intrigue. Will Adam triumph in the final confrontation under the arena of lights, or be crushed by the powerful forces that oppose them? Be sure to stick around until the end to uncover every twist, emotional revelation, and hard-won victory. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels more captivating stories just like this one, and we can't wait to share even more adventures with you. Adam Rayner stepped onto the glassy landing platform, shading his eyes against the dual yellow suns of Nola 4. After weeks aboard a cramped freighter, summoned again, the sudden brilliance and heat were a shock to his earthborn senses, and he took a moment to steady himself before lifting his duffel bag from the shuttle's cargo hold. This was supposed to be a grand new start, a job as a xenobiological consultant for the Universal Science Consortium, coupled with an unbelievably cheap lease on a crystalline apartment in a towering, otherworldly structure. Despite the restless nights on the freighter, Adam was undeniably excited for what lay ahead. Unit 731, he murmured to himself, scanning the building directory with a fingertip. The letters danced across a holographic screen, shifting to the local script the moment he pressed the translator icon. He'd signed the rental contract without setting foot on Nola 4, trusting images and a credit transfer to secure the place. It was risky, but the pictures of the shimmering tower, with rooms that looked like carved gemstones, had captured his imagination. Clutching his bag, he rode a gravity-defying elevator of 7 stories, the transparent walls revealing a dazzling view of the city below. Spires of faceted rock soared into the sky, each reflecting the twin suns with rainbows of light. Air vehicles hummed between them, crossing narrow bridges that linked the spires. It all felt like stepping into a daydream. With a soft chime, the elevator doors slid open onto a corridor of iridescent panels. Numbered apartment doors lined the hall, each shimmering with pastel colors that changed as he walked by. He found the door labeled 731 and pressed a silver intercom button. A moment later, the door slid aside to reveal the unexpected face of his new landlady. She was tall, nearly his own height, though her limbs seemed more willowy and graceful, as if every movement was choreographed. Her skin gleamed a pale turquoise, eyes the color of polished amethyst. Her hair, a wild swirl of silver and jade, framed angular features that were both delicate and striking. A faint hint of translucent scales patterned her cheeks and collarbone. "Welcome, Adam Rayner," she said with a voice like gently ringing chimes. "I am Zalna, your lessor. Please come inside." Adam found himself a little tongue-tied at her exotic beauty. He forced a smile and extended a hand, an earth custom that felt clumsy in that moment. Zalna studied his hand for a breath, then placed both of hers around it. Her skin was cool to the touch, and he felt a faint tremor of some unknown energy pass between them. "Thank you," Adam managed, clearing his throat to hide a sudden wave of self-consciousness. "It's good to be here." Zalna led him through a living area that looked like part art exhibit, part greenhouse. Strange vines with silver-veined leaves climbed the walls, while spherical chairs of glowing crystal were arranged around a low table set with a pitcher of lavender-colored liquid. A faint floral scent drifted through the air, something like jasmine but tinged with an alien spice. Everything was luminous, from the floors that pulsed faintly with each step, to the shifting patterns of light that danced across the transparent ceiling. "In here," Zalna said, sliding open a door to reveal a cozy bedroom with a sweeping panorama of Nola 4's skyline. "I hope you'll find it comfortable." He nodded, already entranced by the view. "It's perfect," he said. "Truly. Thank you for renting it to me on short notice." Zalna inclined her head in an elegant gesture. "You're most welcome," she replied. "My people, the Kalori, value hospitality. We are always curious about visitors from distant worlds." She seemed to glance around as though searching for any detail that might unsettle him. Satisfied, she flashed him a brief, knowing smile. I'll let you settle in, Adam Rayner. If you need anything, please call for me. He watched her exit into the hallway, the trailing edge of her light, shimmering robe swishing across the iridescent tiles. For a moment, Adam just stood there, overwhelmed by the swirl of impressions. He was used to studying alien flora and fauna, things that slithered, flew, or blossomed in bizarre shapes. Meeting a native of Nola 4 in such a personal context felt different, more intimate. His pulse was still racing from the handshake, the mesmerizing color of her eyes, and the lilting quality of her voice. Shaking off the haze, he set his duffel on the bed and began unpacking. He couldn't wait for a shower. The journey had been long, and the recycled freighter air had left him feeling stale. A quick exploration of his new quarters revealed a compact sanitation chamber seamlessly blending sink, shower, and toilet into a single open-concept design. Panels in the walls indicated sophisticated water filtration systems, reminiscent of the advanced caloric technology that had earned them a reputation for efficiency across the galaxy. Adam stripped off his sweaty travel clothes, turned on the shower, and stepped under the water's soothing spray. It carried a faint, pleasant scent, likely the caloric found purely odorless water too sterile. Steam curled around him as tension ebbed from his muscle. He leaned against the tile, letting the warmth seep into every fiber. All he wanted now was to rinse away the grime, maybe explore the city in the evening, then crash into bed. He was working shampoo through his short, dark hair when the bathroom door hissed open. Adam's heart lurched. He spun around, soapy hair plastered against his forehead, to see Zalna standing there with a perplexed expression, eyes fixed on his groin. "Adam Rayner," she said loudly, voice echoing in the humid enclosure. "Why in the suns is there a mini Shai Hulud between your legs?" In his shock, he dropped the shampoo bottle, and it clattered across the tiles. Hey, he stammered, reflexively covering himself. "Don't you knock?" Zalna blinked once, seemingly unruffled by his nakedness. "Knock?" she repeated, tilting her head. "Oh, do you mean request entry? Forgive me, I wanted to tell you dinner will be ready soon, and I assumed you wouldn't mind. Kalori typically bathe communally, so privacy isn't expected." Her gaze flickered downward again, unabashed curiosity in her features. "But that appendage, it's not a parasite? It rather resembles a juvenile desert worm from the southern dunes. Is it always so attached?" Adam felt his cheeks burn hotter than the shower water. It's my penis," he managed, forcibly steadying his voice. "Human males have them. It's completely normal, I promise." Zalna's eyes widened in fascinated wonder. "So that is your method of reproduction?" "Yes. The rumors about humans must be true." He cringed, ignoring the swirl of both embarrassment and an odd thrill that coursed through him. "Could we talk about this later, when I'm not naked?" Her gaze lingered another moment. "Certainly," she said, stepping back through the doorway. "I'll have dinner laid out shortly. Please join me when you're finished." She exited, leaving Adam standing under the shower with his heart hammering in his throat. Welcome to Nola 4, he thought. He was pretty sure he'd never had an introduction quite so personal or awkward. Adam finished his shower in record time, shutting the water off and toweling down with more urgency than relaxation. He pulled on fresh clothes, a simple gray shirt and cargo pants, functional attire for a xenobiologist prepared to trek through alien environments. His mind spun with lingering mortification. All he could picture was Zalna's unflinching stare, her blatant interest in his mini Shai Hulud, as she'd called it. He was accustomed to polite conversation, discreet curiosity, not such a straightforward confrontation with his own anatomy. Still, if he was going to be living here, working alongside Kalori, he'd better adapt to their cultural norms. If they viewed bathing as communal and had no concept of shutting doors for modesty, that was just how it was. Adam recalled that some species found human attitudes toward nudity puritanical, or at least bemusing. Maybe he should be grateful she hadn't invited half the neighbors in to gawk at him. He sighed, raking a hand through damp hair, and made his way toward the living space, drawn by the enticing aroma wafting from beyond the next set of doors. Dinner apparently was included in the rent, and if it was half as appealing as it smelled, he might forgive Zalna for her surprise visit. As he entered the open living area, he found a low crystalline table laden with dishes. Steam rose from bowls filled with brightly colored vegetables and polished shells that seemed to be stuffed with spiced grains. There was also a pitcher of the lavender beverage he'd noticed earlier. Hovering just above the floor was a round cushion, another seat presumably, and Zalna perched on one across from it. She beckoned him closer. "Please, Adam Rayner, join me," she said softly. "I've prepared a meal of local delicacies, though I tried to keep it mild for a newcomer." He carefully eased himself onto the cushion, the soft glow of the furniture reflecting off his shirt. "Thank you," he said, glancing at the spread. "Everything looks exotic. I appreciate you thinking of my palate." Zalna smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling in a surprisingly human way. "I admit I'm curious to see how a human reacts to caloric cuisine," she confessed. "We do enjoy robust flavors. Perhaps your xenobiologist's stomach can handle it." Adam chuckled, grateful to steer the conversation away from the earlier mortification. "I've eaten some strange things during my research, so this should be a treat." He reached for a small, crystalline spoon and dipped it into a stew that smelled like caramelized nuts and roasted peppers. One tentative sip, then a broader smile spread across his face. "This is fantastic." Zalna's eyes gleamed, a hint of pride in her posture. "I'm glad to hear it. And fear not, I haven't forgotten that we have an unfinished discussion regarding your anatomy, but perhaps we can talk about it when you're more comfortable." He nearly choked on a second spoonful at her directness. Clearing his throat, he forced a smile. "Maybe we can save that for dessert conversation." Zalna laughed then, a laugh like a ripple of bells. "As you wish." They fell into an easy rhythm of exchanging cultural tidbits while they ate. Adam learned that Calori architecture favored crystalline materials drawn from the planet's abundant quartz-like deposits, and that their unique vocalizations allowed them to sing in harmonies that could allegedly coax certain crystals into growth or repair. Zalna, it turned out, was something of a caretaker or liaison, a landlord in partial truth, but her responsibilities extended to welcoming off-world tenants and helping them integrate. She had studied linguistics, ensuring she spoke passable standard interplanetary, though her accent still lent a melodic quality to the words. Between bites, Adam answered her questions about Earth. She seemed fascinated by the concept of oceans, vast bodies of water teeming with fish, and by the notion that humans had an array of clothing styles to suit modesty or climate. Evidently, Calori on Nola 4 primarily wore garments for ornamentation and symbolism, not out of shame or a desire to conceal. "It's quite foreign to me," Zalna admitted, swirling the lavender drink in her cup. "We have no taboo around seeing each other's bodies. Still, I can respect that humans might find it intrusive." She leaned forward, tilting her head. "I hope my earlier curiosity didn't offend you. It was not my intention to cause discomfort." Adam sensed genuine regret in her voice. "No offense taken," he said, though his cheeks heated again at the memory. "Just cultural differences. Earth-based humans typically value privacy, especially in personal spaces. We're not used to someone barging in while we shower." She nodded slowly. "Understood. I will remember to request permission next time." A teasing smile tugged at her lips. "If there must be a next time?" He laughed awkwardly. "I suppose you're free to do what you want in your own home. Just maybe give me a warning first." Zalna's smile broadened. "Agreed," she said and returned to her meal. When the main courses were nearly gone, Adam asked about the curious plants climbing the walls, vines with speckled, bioluminescent blossoms. Zalna explained they were silver tendrils, a native species that help purify indoor air by filtering out toxins. Calori used them in nearly every building, which was why the city's enclosed spaces were so fresh. Conversation continued easily, and by the end, Adam felt a warmth that wasn't just from alien spices. He realized Zalna's unwavering gaze, though disconcerting at first, had grown strangely comforting. There was no judgment in her eyes, only genuine fascination. Every so often she would ask another sly question about humans, and he'd do his best to answer without blushing. When finally they cleared the table, Adam realized he felt more at ease with Zalna than he'd expected. Her sincerity disarmed him, and her directness, especially about bodily matters, was starting to feel refreshing, if not a bit scandalous by his standards. Maybe settling here would be even more intriguing than he had imagined. Night fell with surprising swiftness on Nola 4, the second sun dipping below the horizon not long after the first. A dusky purple twilight enveloped the spired city, and the crystalline structures glowed with captured solar energy, turning the skyline into a soft rainbow of neon lights. Adam found himself too restless to sleep. The meal, the conversation, the entire day had been a bombardment of new stimuli. He wandered into the side corridor, noticing for the first time an alcove featuring a semicircular window. The vantage offered a breathtaking view of the city below, the streets lit with glowing pathways that trailed between shimmering towers. Tiny vehicles zipped through the air, leaving faint streaks of color behind them. Taking a moment to appreciate the sight, Adam thought about how far he'd come, from a quiet Earth city with its humdrum familiarity to this kaleidoscopic alien wonderland. Unexpectedly, Zalna appeared at the corridor's edge, her presence barely announced by the soft swish of her robe. She joined him at the window, her hair catching the ambient glow so that it shimmered like spun glass. "It's peaceful, isn't it?" she murmured, glancing at the city lights. Kalori often perform evening songs to gather ambient energies. If you listen carefully, you might hear them. Adam strained his ears, but all he heard was the soft hiss of wind. Then, just on the edge of perception, a faint chorus rose, a resonance like distant chanting, harmonic and hauntingly beautiful. "That's incredible," he breathed, goosebumps prickling his arms. "Are they singing to the crystals?" "In a way," Zalna said, eyes half-lidded. "We believe the crystals store memories, not just from us, but from the planet's entire history. Singing helps us connect. Some say it's how we keep the city alive." They fell into a companionable silence, lulled by the distant melodies. Adam had an urge to ask more about her life, how she became a caretaker, why she'd opened her home to an alien. But a flicker of reticence in her posture stopped him. Perhaps it wasn't the moment for personal questions. Instead, he turned to face her, forging a small but genuine smile. "Thanks for dinner and for tolerating my human awkwardness." She responded with a laugh, soft and musical. "I find your awkwardness rather charming," she admitted. "It's part of why I offered you this apartment at a bargain. Humans have a certain earnestness." Adam snorted. "Earnestness? Or gullibility?" Her expression grew thoughtful. "Sometimes the two dance close together. But I see sincerity in your eyes, Adam Rayner, and I'd rather host someone with sincerity than one skilled in deception." They stood side by side, listening to the far-off songs and gazing over the pulsing lights of the city. The moment was almost intimate. He could sense a subtle tension, something beyond mere curiosity. But before he could parse it further, Zalna bowed her head politely. "I'll retire now. Rest well, Adam. Tomorrow I'll show you around the city's research district so you can connect with your colleagues." "Good night," Adam said, a soft smile tugging his lips. He watched her leave, the lines of her robe catching the ambient glow with every step. She moved like she belonged among these luminescent towers, like a piece of living crystal herself. He lingered at the window another minute, feeling an unspoken pull to remain in this place, this new home that felt both alien and strangely welcoming. The next morning arrived with a gentle chime, an automated alarm woven into the apartment's crystal infrastructure. Adam stirred, blinking against the softly pulsing lights that heralded dawn on Nola 4. He'd slept deeper than he expected, lulled by the faint vibrations that resonated through the building itself. Dressing quickly, he noticed the peaceful hush that seemed to blanket everything. He found Zalna waiting in the kitchen area, brewing something akin to tea in a tall, conical apparatus that glowed faintly from within. The beverage smelled of spice and honey when she offered him a cup. Adam sipped, finding it sweet and invigorating. "Morning," he greeted, still a bit drowsy. Zalna nodded, her turquoise complexion taking on a more vivid hue in the daylight. "Good morning, did you rest well?" "I did," he admitted, rotating the cup in his hands. "I think your city's ambiance agrees with me." She gave him a knowing grin. "I suspected as much. I hope you are ready. I arranged for a swift transport to the research district. It'll give you a chance to settle your work obligations and let me pick up some supplies." Adam nodded, remembering that his first official day with the Universal Science Consortium would be tomorrow. Today was mostly orientation and a chance to meet a few of the other researchers assigned to NOLA 4. Lead the way, he said, trying not to feel too self-conscious about how much he relied on her guidance. Their transit took the form of a streamlined pod that hovered a few meters above a set of humming rails. Sleek and silent, it glided between the crystal spires, offering sweeping views of the city below. Adam leaned forward in his seat, enthralled by the swirling ribbons of color that shone from nearly every surface. Flocks of small, iridescent flyers darted among the towers, winged creatures that seemed to cross between hummingbirds and dragonflies. Zalna pointed them out, explaining that these creatures, called opal wings, helped pollinate the city's hanging gardens. Kalori believed in harmonious coexistence, always trying to blend technology with living ecosystems. When they reached the research district, Adam could see the difference in architecture. The structures here were less ornate, more functional, though still made of crystalline materials that caught the morning light. An impressive building resembling a giant prism half buried in the ground housed the xenobiology labs. As he stepped off the pod, Adam marveled at the faint hum in the air, the resonance of advanced equipment. Zalna walked beside him, her posture composed yet watchful. "I have some errands, but I'll check in with you soon," she said. "Your colleagues will handle your credentials. If you need me, just call. I'll be in the adjacent marketplace." He gave her a grateful smile. "Thank you again for everything. You've made this transition so much smoother." She offered a small wave before disappearing into the crowd, leaving Adam to navigate the labyrinth of researchers, technicians, and engineers bustling around the complex. Feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves, he headed inside, credentials in hand, ready to begin the next phase of his new life on NOLA 4. Adam's orientation went smoothly, though it was a whirlwind of names, specialized labs, and security protocols. He introduced himself to Dr. Sandra Lee, a fellow Earth human who oversaw a major xenobotany project, and Dr. Raj Malhotra, an exobiology expert from Mars Colony. Both greeted Adam with enthusiasm, pleased to have another pair of eyes examining NOLA 4's biodiversity. The facility was state-of-the-art, containing sealed greenhouses for off-world flora and vast digital archives charting the planet's species. Yet, despite the professionalism of the place, Adam's thoughts kept drifting back to Zalna. He replayed their interactions, her poised demeanor, her mesmerizing eyes, and of course the mortifying moment in the shower. He couldn't quite shake the memory of her calmly assessing his naked form. Part of him was scandalized. Another part was amused. Even more confusing was the faint pull of attraction he felt, something he'd promised himself he wouldn't indulge. After his last failed relationship back on Earth, a painful breakup that had, in fact, spurred his decision to accept the off-world assignment, Adam had made a private vow. No romance during this mission. Focus on work, keep things simple, and avoid entanglements that might complicate his research or his peace of mind. But life had a sense of humor, apparently. The moment he set foot on NOLA 4, he encountered an alluring alien woman with little concept of human modesty. "Welcome to the team," Dorlee said, pulling Adam from his reverie. She handed him an access badge. "We've heard great things about your fieldwork on Regulus 9. I hope you'll contribute significantly here. We have a lot of unanswered questions about the Kalori's relationship to their environment." Adam nodded, forcing himself to focus. "Thank you. I'm eager to explore. The architecture alone is astounding, and the local flora is integrated in fascinating ways." She agreed, gesturing to a towering analysis station. "We have daily data feeds from the city's agricultural domes. Kalori are protective of their secrets, but they've been receptive to partnership. Probably helps that we're not a typical corporate outfit. Our mission is purely research and collaboration." He checked the time, realizing he'd spent most of the day familiarizing himself with the labs. Zalna had promised to reconnect. It was nearing the appointed hour. After a few polite farewells, Adam made his way outside, stepping into the bright double-sun afternoon. The moment he spotted Zalna amidst the bustle, her turquoise skin and silver-green hair catching the light like a beacon, his heart kicked up a notch. She waved him over, balancing a few wrapped parcels in her arms. He offered to carry one, and she relinquished a small bundle that felt surprisingly heavy. "Successful day?" she asked, leading him back toward the hoverpod. "Very," he replied, noticing how her melodic accent set her words apart from the crowd's chatter. I met my new coworkers. They're brilliant and almost as curious about the Kalori as I am. But I think some of the more cultural nuances might take me a while to grasp. Zalna offered a half smile that hinted at mischief. I'm here to help, however I can. Though fair warning, what you call nuances are everyday life for us. They boarded the pod, which hummed to life, gliding above the crystalline streets. Adam gazed at her, feeling an unspoken tension, an undercurrent that drew him in despite his promises to himself. If Nolafor had shown him anything, it was that the universe didn't always care about human vows or boundaries. He had no idea how soon that tension would boil over, or how dramatically their lives would intertwine, particularly once danger made its abrupt entrance. 3 days into Adam's new life on Nolafor, he already felt a routine forming, though routine on a crystalline alien planet was anything but ordinary. Mornings commenced with a light caloric breakfast, a bowl of pulpy, sweet fruit that sparkled faintly like opals, and a shared pot of that spiced tea with Zalna. From there, he commuted to the research district, where his hours were filled with cataloging local flora and fauna, scanning laboratory results, and coordinating with Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra on upcoming survey missions. By late afternoon, he returned to the apartment spire where Zalna often awaited him with new insights, fresh produce she'd gathered from market stalls, or another small glimpse into Kalori culture. The more time they spent together, the more natural their companionship became. Zalna seemed genuinely fascinated by Adam's world, asking countless questions about human customs, why humans wore multiple layers of clothing, how Earth families interacted, and what it felt like to live under just one sun. Sometimes her curiosity veered into intimate territory. She inquired about human courting rituals or displayed frank interest in how humans responded to pheromones. He'd become accustomed to her directness, and occasionally he'd even stammer less when she teased him about that appendage she found so odd. Despite the blossoming comfort, Adam sensed that Zalna held part of herself in reserve. A flicker of worry would pass over her features at random moments, or she would abruptly change the topic when conversation ventured too close to her personal past. One evening, as they ate a stir-fry of roasted tubers and spiced algae, Adam had never imagined such a pairing, he decided to probe a little. "You seem distracted sometimes," he said gently, trying to mask the concern in his voice. "Is everything all right?" She looked up, amethyst eyes reflecting the glow of the overhead lights. For a moment, she stayed silent, fingers toying with a piece of crystallized vegetable. "I've simply had old ghosts on my mind," she said at last. "Memories of someone I used to know, someone who might not approve of my choices now." Adam's heart twinged with an unfamiliar stab of jealousy. "You mean a friend, or—" Zalna exhaled, setting down her fork. "An ex-partner, a Kalori official named Crane. We separated cycles ago, but our parting wasn't friendly." She paused, as if weighing how much to reveal. "He's influential, can be quite jealous, and has a tendency to hold on to grudges. I learned recently he might still be watching me, and by extension, you." A surge of protectiveness rose within Adam. "Watching you? Why would he care? It's been cycles, right?" Her lips formed a tight line. "He despises being cast aside. I fear he discovered that I'm renting to you, a human. The Kalori can be open-minded about many things, but Crane hates feeling replaced. He may view our friendship as a challenge to his pride." Before Adam could respond, a tremor seemed to run through the spire, rattling the dishes on the table. At first, Adam thought it was an earthquake, but Nolafor had stable tectonics. Zalna's face went rigid, her eyes flashing with sudden alarm. "Get down," she hissed, bolting to her feet. "That's no natural shake. Someone's attacking the building." Alarms blared through the corridors, and the lights in the apartment flickered ominously. Adam scrambled after Zalna, heart pounding, while the floor vibrated with each new distant blast. The typical hush of the spire gave way to sirens and electronic voices announcing "intruder alert" in both Kalori script and interplanetary standard. Zalna rushed to a panel near the living room wall, pressing a series of glowing glyphs. The crystal slid aside, revealing a hidden compartment stocked with emergency supplies and, to Adam's surprise, a sleek, double-barreled energy pistol. She seized the weapon without hesitation, then tossed Adam a smaller sidearm. I keep a panic room hidden behind that door, she said, gesturing toward what looked like a decorative alcove. In case we need it. Adam shook his head, adrenaline surging. Who the hell is brazen enough to attack a residential tower? Zalna bit her lip. Kalori raiders for hire, or Crane's mercenaries. Either way, they're trying to draw me out. We need to hide. She guided him to the alcove, pressing her palm against the sensor. The wall slid open, revealing a narrow, reinforced chamber lined with monitors. The moment they stepped inside, the door sealed with a hiss, dampening the roar of chaos beyond. Everything grew eerily quiet, broken only by the muffled thumps of more distant detonations. Holy, this is high-tech, Adam breathed, his gaze flickering across screens that showed various angles of the apartment corridors. Sparks danced across two camera feeds where part of the building had evidently suffered damage. A few Kalori residents were fleeing down stairwells, while armed intruders, masked, tall figures, swept the halls. Zalna sank into a built-in chair, her face drawn with worry. Crane must be behind this, she said, voice trembling with anger. He never forgave me, hiring mercenaries to break into my home. I should have been prepared. Adam leaned close, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll get out of this, he said firmly. You said this panic room is reinforced, right? She nodded, exhaling shakily. It is. They can't breach the door easily, and the authorities should respond, but Nola Force security is sometimes slow in personal disputes. They might think it's a local matter. Her jaw tightened. Crane will pay them off or distract them somehow. Adam's stomach churned. The fear in Zalna's eyes sent a spike of protectiveness through him. Is there any chance we can signal someone outside? My colleagues or Derlee, or anyone who can help? She tapped a control panel, lips thinning in frustration. Internal comms are scrambled. External transmissions might be jammed. Let me try. Her fingers danced over the glowing controls, but nothing changed on the readouts. She cursed under her breath in Kalori. Adam watched the monitor, noticing how methodical the intruders were. They moved in coordinated teams, scanning the apartments. Another trembling shake rattled the cameras, accompanied by a partial collapse of a corridor. They're trying to flush us out, he realized grimly. If we stay put, they might bring down the entire section of the tower. Zalna dragged a hand over her face. I'm so sorry, Adam. You came here for research, not to get caught in my personal feud. He crouched beside her, heart hammering. This isn't your fault, and you're not in this alone. Their eyes met, and despite the imminent danger, a charged intimacy hovered between them, like a silent promise. The next explosion roared, shaking the panic room with enough force to knock Adam into Zalna. She yelped, bracing against him. When the dust settled, a small alert flashed red across the panel, structural integrity compromised. Adam's mind raced. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. With each blast, the mercenaries weakened the building's supports, risking the entire spire's collapse. Hiding in the panic room might no longer be an option if the structural damage progressed. He jumped to his feet, scanning the array of monitors until he found a feed that showed a relatively clear corridor, an emergency stairwell that seemed less crowded by the intruders. Zalna, he said quickly, I think we need to make a break for it. If the tower comes down, this room won't save us. She stared up at him, a mix of determination and dread in her eyes. I'm not sure we can make it out. They'll be swarming the exits. Then we have to find a safer place to hole up, he replied, pointing to the corridor on the camera feed. What about your connections in the city? Is there another secure location nearby? Zalna chewed her lower lip. I might be able to get us into a private security bunker used by the Kalori authorities, but that's halfway across the district. Adam glanced at the small energy pistol he clutched. The notion of fighting professional mercenaries was terrifying, but staying put spelled certain doom. Let's go, he said, offering her a hand. We'll move quietly, try to avoid a direct confrontation. She nodded, swallowing hard. All right, but the moment we see trouble, run. She paused, steeling herself. And if I tell you to leave me behind, not an option, Adam cut in, voice shaking with suppressed emotion. I'm not leaving you to face them alone. Her eyes flickered, and for an instant, he thought she might protest. Instead, she squeezed his hand. Let's go. They emerged from the panic room and into the apartment, which was now dark except for the emergency lighting. Smoke drifted from the far hallway where part of the ceiling had caved. The acrid smell of burnt wiring stung Adam's nostrils. Outside, sirens wailed. Moving swiftly and keeping low, they slipped through the battered entrance of Zalna's home. Adam held his breath at every turn. Certain mercenaries would appear from the shadows. Yet for the moment, the corridor was deserted. Likely they had moved deeper into the tower. This way, Zalna whispered, taking the lead. Though her hands trembled on the weapon's grip, her steps were certain, each footfall placed with a dancer's care. She navigated them around fallen debris, past smoldering decorative sculptures, and through a haze of flickering lights. At the stairwell, they found a Kalori neighbor crouched behind a shattered door, eyes wide with terror. Zalna gestured for them to follow. 3 more residents joined, forming a small cluster of panicked civilians. Stay behind us, Adam advised, trying to project confidence he barely felt. We'll find a safer route. Descending the stairs proved harrowing. Whenever the building shook, dust rained down and the walls groaned ominously. Partway down, they heard voices, barking orders in a guttural language. Adam's pulse thundered as he signaled everyone to freeze. 2 armed mercenaries stepped into view below, scanning the area with handheld devices that cast eerie green beams across the walls. Adam gritted his teeth, glancing at Zalna. She nodded, raising her weapon. She mouthed a single word. Now. Energy fire erupted as Zalna pulled the trigger, the double-barreled pistol sending 2 quick pulses of condensed plasma. The mercenaries reacted with startled shouts, diving for cover behind the stairwell's railing. Adam followed suit, aiming his smaller sidearm at one of their exposed legs. He squeezed off a shot, the recoil surprisingly mild, and heard a grunt of pain as the mercenary lurched to the side. The stairwell flashed with discharges of neon light and the acrid smell of burning ozone. Adam's nerves screamed. He'd never been in a real firefight. His experience was limited to the occasional practice range. Yet desperation fueled his focus. Another volley of energy bolts tore into the staircase, sending splinters of crystal flying. One mercenary yelled, "Pull back!" in interplanetary standard. Adam seized the chance, motioning for the others to move. Zalna lobbed a small stun charge, a device she must have grabbed from her emergency kit, down the stairs. It popped with a blinding flash and the mercenaries stumbled, temporarily disoriented. "Go, go," Adam hissed. He and Zalna led the residents past the incapacitated attackers, racing downward. They emerged 2 floors below, sweat drenching their bodies from fear and exertion. Once clear of the immediate gunfire, Zalna paused, pressing a palm to her chest to steady her breathing. The small group clustered behind her, trembling. "We need to reach ground level or a functional transport tube," she said. "Otherwise, we're trapped." Adam nodded, scanning the hallway. Lights flickered overhead, casting alternating shadows that distorted the corridor's crystalline walls. "Let's see if the main exit is still accessible." Rounding a corner, they found the building's lobby in shambles. Broken furniture, collapsed sculptures, and scorched floor panels. Smoke hung in the air, illuminated by strobing emergency beacons. Worse, a cluster of mercenaries guarded the front doors, their rifles trained on any movement. Adam counted at least 5. Zalna sucked in a breath. "That's too many. We can't fight our way through." Adam's mind raced for a plan. He glanced around for an alternative. A side entrance, a staff corridor, something. Spotting a sign in Kalori script that likely led to a utility passage, he tugged Zalna's sleeve and pointed. She nodded, swiftly gesturing for everyone to follow. They slipped behind the remnants of a broken reception desk and into the corridor. Here, the smoke thinned, and the hum of sabotage was less acute. Adam's heart hammered. They'd lost direct line of sight to the mercenaries, but for all he knew, more could be waiting around the next bend. Zalna's eyes flickered with determination. "If we make it to the secondary exit, we can access the city's public walkway. From there, we might hail a transport." Yet even as she said it, the distant thunder of another explosion rocked the tower, and the overhead lights went black. The corridor plunged into darkness. broken only by the faint glow of bioluminescent vines creeping along the walls. Panicked gasps rose from the civilians trailing them. Adam reached for Zelna's arm, heart pounding. "We'll get through this," he murmured, trying to instill confidence in her and himself. But a gnawing dread settled in his gut. Crane's mercenaries weren't just attacking a random building. They were specifically hunting Zalna, and by extension, him. If they escaped this tower, would it really be over, or just the beginning of a wider pursuit? Miraculously, the secondary exit was unguarded. They slipped through a half-collapsed doorway into the open air, where the dual suns cast a harsh, late-afternoon glare. Sirens wailed across the district. Above them, black smoke curled from the damaged spire. Emergency vehicles, sleek, insect-like craft, circled the upper levels, shining spotlights through jagged holes in the structure. Adam felt relief and horror in equal measure. Relief that they and the cluster of civilians were out, but horror at the blatant violence scorching the city. He turned to Zalna, who was scanning the skies. "Now what?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She pointed toward a broad walkway that curved around the base of neighboring buildings. "We get these people to safety, then we find a more secure location," she said, handing a trembling neighbor off to a paramedic who just arrived on a hovercart. A quick flurry of words and caloric passed between them, after which Zalna turned to Adam. "The local authorities are on site, but they're overstretched. We can't assume they'll stop Crane's men right away." The paramedic ushered the displaced civilians onto a medical transport, leaving Adam and Zalna briefly alone on the sidewalk. Smoke still drifted upward, swirling in the scorching brightness of Nola 4's suns. Adam's gaze swept the surrounding blocks, worry gnawing at him. "Are we sure Crane's mercenaries won't just chase us into the streets?" Zalna hesitated, pressing her lips thin. "They might, but they'd be more cautious out in the open. The Kalori peacekeepers have jurisdiction out here, and assaulting random pedestrians is a step too far, even for mercenaries. Their contract likely focuses on capturing me, or you, within the tower." Adam set a protective hand on her shoulder. "Then we should vanish. Hide somewhere they won't think to look." Her gaze moved to the horizon where crystal spires gleamed in the distance. "I have an idea. My friend Arkin runs a workshop on the outskirts of the city. He refurbishes old hovercraft and small flyers. We could lie low there while we figure out our next move." Adam glanced back at the building, heart heavy. He'd lost his home once before, on Earth after leaving for this assignment, and now he risked losing this new sanctuary as well. "Let's go," he said resolutely. "We can't stay." They hurried through the adjacent blocks, weaving into side streets that shimmered with leftover morning dew. Fear lurked in Adam's chest as they passed occasional Kalori citizens who whispered about the tower attack. Every so often, they'd spot someone on a roof or perched on a balcony, scanning the crowds below. Adam tensed at each silhouette, wary it might be a lookout in league with Crane. Zalna led them onto a transport platform nestled under an archway. It resembled a large disc that levitated a foot off the ground, tethered to invisible rails. They stepped on, and she inserted a small crystal key into a slot. Immediately, the platform emitted a soft hum and glided forward, picking up speed. "How far is Arkin's place?" Adam asked over the wind rushing past them. "Half an hour by city rails," Zalna replied, eyes scanning the path ahead. "We'll keep our heads low. With luck, we'll blend into the traffic." Adam exhaled, nodding. He couldn't shake the sense that events had escalated too quickly to be just a random attack. Crane's involvement was almost certain, and the man's motives were becoming clearer by the minute. He'd targeted Zalna, forcibly pushing her out of her home. To what end? To intimidate her? Or to claim her again? Adam clenched his fists. Whatever Crane's twisted reasons, Adam wouldn't let the bastard hurt her, or destroy the fragile sense of belonging they'd begun to cultivate together. Arkin's workshop lay on the perimeter of the city, where the towers gave way to low-slung warehouses carved from duller, rougher crystal. The wide roads were lined with rows of hovercraft in various states of disassembly, while mechanical drones zipped overhead, ferrying parts from one open bay to another. Despite the utilitarian setting, a certain artistic flair persisted. Colorful murals adorned the warehouse exteriors, depicting Kalori mythic figures in swirling patterns of light. They arrived in the late afternoon. Zalna guided the transport disc toward a broad building with massive overhead doors. A sign in Kalori script read something Adam couldn't interpret, but he assumed it was Arkin's name or business emblem. The door stood partially open, and they slipped inside. "Arkin!" Zalna called, stepping off the platform. "It's me. We need help." A moment later, a lanky Kalori male emerged from behind a half-built hovercar, wiping crystalline grease from his turquoise fingers. His features were sharper than Zalna's, with ridges along his brow and a faint, luminescent swirl near his temples. He froze upon seeing them, his amethyst eyes widening. "Zalna," he said in a clipped voice, concern evident. "What in the sun's happened? The news says your building was attacked." She exhaled shakily, stepping closer. It was. Mercenaries with probable ties to Crane. They damaged the spire. Adam and I barely escaped. Arkin's gaze flicked to Adam. "And who is this human?" "I'm Adam Rayner," he offered quietly, feeling an odd need to justify his presence. "I rent a room from Zalna. We were together when the assault happened." Something flickered in Arkin's eyes, curiosity mixed with skepticism, but he turned back to Zalna. "I told you Crane wouldn't let go," he said, tone grim. "He's been asking about you for a while now. Some rumor about you consorting with an off-worlder." Zalna's cheeks darkened to a teal blush. "Yes, well, apparently he took offense. We need a safe place, just for a short while until we figure out our next steps." Arkin frowned. "Of course, you can stay. There's a storage area in the back you can use. Not exactly luxurious, but it's secluded." He picked up a tablet-like device, tapping the screen. "I'll rig an alarm system. If anyone unauthorized approaches, we'll know." Relief washed over Zalna's features, and she extended both hands to clasp Arkin's, a gesture that seemed to hold deep meaning in Kalori culture. "Thank you, old friend. I won't forget this." Adam helped Arkin shuffle aside crates and mechanical parts to clear a space in the workshop's rear corner. The makeshift room featured a small cot, a battered sofa, and an overhead lamp that flickered slightly. Not exactly homey, but it was private. As they settled in, the exhaustion of the day caught up to them. Adam sank onto the sofa, shoulders slumped, while Zalna paced the small area. "What do we do now?" he asked quietly. "We can't just cower here forever." Zalna glanced at him, her jaw set. "We gather evidence," she replied firmly. "If Crane is behind the mercenaries, we expose him. Once we have proof, the Kalori authorities can't turn a blind eye. He can't bribe his way out of formal charges. I hope." Adam nodded, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'll talk to my colleagues at the consortium. They might have resources to help track down Crane's dealings, and maybe your friend Arkin has connections here that can guide us." She sighed, dropping onto the cot. "It won't be easy, Adam. Crane wields influence. But I'm tired of running, tired of letting fear shape my life." She glanced at him. "And I know you're probably regretting ever renting that apartment." He shook his head, a soft warmth stirring in his chest despite the danger. "Actually, no, even with everything that happened, I wouldn't trade meeting you for anything." A trembling smile curved her lips. Their gazes held for a moment, the turmoil of the day receding just enough for Adam to recall the first stirrings of fascination he had felt in that bright apartment. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers gently through hers. "We'll get through this," he said again, quieter this time. "Together." That night, the workshop hummed with distant mechanical drones as Arkin toiled away, both on his hovercraft refurbishments and on hacking local data streams for leads. He rigged a portable comm station in the corner, letting Zalna attempt contact with Kalori authorities she trusted, as well as with Adam's research colleagues. The signals flickered in and out. Crane might still be employing scramblers in the city, but they managed to get a few messages through. While waiting, Adam and Zalna huddled near a small heating coil, an improvised substitute for the apartment's comfortable temperature controls. The overhead lamp cast shifting shadows across the walls, making them both look more tired than they felt. "You mentioned earlier that your ex-partner is an official," Adam said gently, watching the way the lamplight highlighted the shimmer of scales along her neck. "Just how high up is he?" Zalna stared at the dull red coil glowing on the heating device. "He's part of the Kalori Council, which oversees infrastructural projects, construction, resource allocation, security contracts. He's not at the very top, but enough to command private squads, or at least hire them quietly. He used to brag about having eyes and ears in every spire. Adam thought of the synergy between Kalori architecture and governance, how the council might monitor crystal towers and utilities. It sounded like Crane could manipulate systems to track Zalna's whereabouts if he truly wanted. We'll have to assume he's searching for you right now. Agreed, she said, voice tight. Then she attempted a wry smile. I never imagined I'd be a fugitive in my own city. Adam reached out, resting a hand over hers. You're not a fugitive. You're just on the run from a powerful jerk who wants to control you. She let out a soft laugh, though her eyes were sad. If I'd known my personal history would endanger you. Stop, Adam said, squeezing her hand. You didn't cause this, and you're not responsible for Crane's obsession. I'm here because I choose to be. A hush fell between them, laden with the tension of unspoken feelings. Adam's pulse quickened as he realized how close they were. Her sea-green hair brushed his shoulder, and for a moment his entire world shrank to the faint reflection of lamplight in her amethyst eyes. He recalled with a twinge of heat the memory of her walking in on him in the shower, her unabashed curiosity, and the way embarrassment had vied with attraction. Now, confronted with danger and the stark reality of their precarious situation, the attraction felt magnified. The line between them, that vow of no romantic entanglements he'd made before leaving Earth, was beginning to blur. Slowly, he raised his free hand to her cheek, the contact so gentle she didn't flinch. Instead, Zalna turned her face toward him, the faint scales on her skin catching the glow in tiny prisms. Kalori aren't always reserved about physical closeness, she murmured, eyes steady on his. It's just that trust is sacred. I don't trust easily. Adam's heart pounded. He wanted to kiss her. He couldn't pretend otherwise. You can trust me, he said, voice low. I won't let Crane or anyone else hurt you again. In response, she leaned in, closing the distance. Their lips met in a soft, tentative press that sent a jolt through Adam's entire body. The overhead lamp flickered, as if responding to the energy between them. They lingered there, the moment suspended in the hush of the workshop. When they pulled apart, Zalna's breath trembled, and so did his. The words, "We'll get through this together," echoed silently in the space between them. More promise than statement now, they stayed like that, hands entwined, hearts thudding with a mixture of fear and hope for whatever came next. Sleep came fitfully in Arkin's workshop, with Adam and Zalna alternating between restless dozing and anxious awareness of every thrum of activity outside. The clang of metal parts, the hum of drones, and Arkin's murmured curses in Kalori as he tinkered with new security enhancements formed a surreal lullaby. By the time early morning light crept through the warehouse's high windows, Adam felt only half rested, but his mind crackled with tension. Still, there was work to do. Over a hastily shared meal of nutrient bars and spiced kelp strips, they gathered around Arkin's improvised comm station. The console beeped sporadically, sometimes crackling with partial transmissions. It was then that an incoming message from Dr. Sandra Lee flashed on screen, garbled but recognizable. Adam, came her distorted voice, we got your update. Dr. Malhotra and I are working to confirm mercenary involvement. The local government denies direct knowledge, but we suspect a high-level official is pulling strings. We've discovered a name, Crane. Adam and Zalna exchanged uneasy glances. He's rumored to have private security ties. We need proof. Meet us at the Sela Archives in the Central Research District. We have resources there. The transmission cut off with a burst of static. Arkin pressed a few glyphs, trying to re-establish the link, but to no avail. So you have allies, he said, eyeing Adam. That's good, but traveling to the Central District is dangerous. Crane's people might be watching every official route. Adam exhaled. He and Zalna had hashed out the plan the previous night, but now it felt perilously real. We don't have a choice, Adam said, voice tight. We need that evidence to pin this on Crane and get the Kalori Council to intervene. Zalna nodded, though a faint tremor ran through her hands. Once we have tangible proof, we can force an inquiry. Crane might still try to wriggle out, but he'll face public scrutiny he can't simply buy off. Arkin crossed his arms, expression torn between worry and loyalty. I'll give you my fastest hovercraft. You can slip through side routes, avoid major checkpoints, but if Crane has watchers posted, they might catch on. Adam's gaze shifted to Zalna. "We'll manage," he said gently, recalling how bravely she'd handled a blaster in the spire. "If we keep moving, they won't pin us down." She gave him a wan smile, but determination lit her amethyst eyes. "I'm ready. Let's end this so we can have our lives back." The journey preparations were swift. Arkin outfitted them with basic survival gear, extra rations, a water filtration canister, and an old but sturdy comm booster to cut through jamming signals. Adam double-checked his sidearm, and Zalna tucked an additional stun grenade into her belt. Just as they were about to board the sleek, cobalt hovercraft, Arkin hesitated. "Listen," he said, placing a hand on Zalna's shoulder. "There's a rumor going around the city. You and Adam are involved. Crane's men might use that against you." He glanced at Adam pointedly. "Don't let fear or shame drive you apart. Stand strong together if you want to win." Zalna swallowed, giving Arkin's hand a brief squeeze. "I won't hide it," she whispered. "Crane already knows I've moved on. That's enough to make him furious. But we won't cower because of his pride." With that, they hopped into the hovercraft, its engine purring like a large cat. The workshop doors slid open, revealing a still hazy dawn. Adam fired up the controls, feeling Zalna's presence beside him like an anchor in a storm. Their path lay ahead, treacherous, uncertain, and filled with the shadows of a vengeful ex-lover's wrath. But they would press on, side by side, in search of the proof that could free them once and for all. The hovercraft cut through the outskirts of Nolafor's cityscape, gliding past deserted side streets and silent industrial yards. Adam kept their speed moderate, preferring a discreet pace to avoid undue attention. The crystal spires of the central district loomed ahead, awash in the morning glow, their edges refracting the sunlight into prismatic arcs across the sky. Zalna tapped a display on the hovercraft's console, bringing up a local map. "Sela archives are here," she said, pointing to a cluster of tall, geometric structures. "It's a public knowledge repository, but the consortium has a secured annex on one of the upper levels." Adam nodded. "Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra will likely have their equipment set up there. If we can just get inside without alerting Crane's watchers." His sentence trailed off as the craft neared a busier thoroughfare. Kalori citizens populated the sidewalks and bridgeways, going about their daily routines with a cautious air. The aftermath of the tower attack must have rippled through the city. Some wore anxious expressions, and a few looked up at the spires as if expecting more explosions. Blending into the morning traffic, Adam steered the hovercraft onto a broad lane flanked by glowing signposts. They passed a few patrol vehicles. Each time, Adam's heart lurched, expecting the sirens to flare. But the patrols seemed mostly directed at crowd control. Zalna's hand hovered near her weapon, knuckles white. "We can't assume anonymity," she muttered. "Crane might have eyes on official frequencies." At last, they approached the Sela archives, an imposing trio of octahedral towers connected by elevated walkways. Adam guided the hovercraft to a subterranean parking tier, hidden beneath an overhang of translucent stone. They disembarked in a cavernous space lit by pulsing veins of luminescent mineral. Dozens of parked vehicles lined the walls, some sleek and modern, others battered from years of use. Adam tossed Zalna a tense smile. "Ready?" she exhaled. "As I'll ever be." They navigated up a spiral ramp into the central lobby of the archives. The interior was breathtaking, rows upon rows of crystalline shelves filled with data tablets and memory crystals, each reflecting soft pastel lights overhead. Kalori librarians moved in a hushed dance, reshelving items and assisting visitors who browsed massive holographic displays. Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra, waiting near a gilded kiosk, waved them over. Both wore worn expressions. Dr. Lee, with her dark hair in a tight bun, greeted Adam with a quick, relieved handshake. Dr. Malhotra inclined his head politely to Zalna. "We're glad you made it," Dr. Lee whispered, her gaze flicking around as if expecting ambush. "We managed to tap into the city's security feeds. Crane's name is all over the manifest for contracted mercenaries." Dr. Malhotra pulled out a compact data module. "But it's encrypted behind layers of corporate shell companies," he added. "We need direct evidence linking him to the tower attack if we want the council to intervene." Zalna squared her shoulders. "What kind of direct evidence?" Witness statements, for one, Dr. Lee said. Official logs that show these mercenaries' orders came from Crane or his proxies. But we found references to a challenge record as well. Something about Kalori tradition, an official duel. It seems Crane might be planning to force a confrontation. Adam's brow knitted in confusion. A duel? That sounds archaic. Zalna grimaced. Kalori do have a historical code allowing formal challenges over personal disputes, but it's rarely invoked. If Crane challenges Adam or me, it could trap us in a public spectacle. The outcome could heavily influence public opinion and the council's response. Dr. Malhotra nodded, which is exactly why he might do it. If Adam refuses, he looks weak, and Crane can leverage that to tarnish your cause. If Adam accepts and loses, Crane cements his position and claims moral high ground. A cold sweat broke across Adam's forehead. The notion of fighting a powerful Kalori official, and probably a trained one at that, was terrifying. But if the alternative meant letting Crane publicly brand them as cowards, or worse, forcibly separate them. Adam swallowed, heart thudding. Zalna touched Adam's arm. "We'll figure this out," she said softly. "But be prepared. Crane's challenge may be the least of our revelations." Her expression turned unreadable, and Adam had the sense she was hiding something else. A deeper worry, unspoken yet urgent. He squeezed her hand gently, wanting to reassure her. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. But a distant dread gnawed at him. The fear that before the duel or any other challenge, Crane might strike again. And this time in a way they couldn't escape. Over the next several hours, Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra coordinated from a small side room in the consortium's annex within the archives, scanning for evidence in various city records. Meanwhile, Zalna used her local credentials to access encrypted Kalori databases, stepping carefully to avoid alerting Crane's allies. Adam assisted where he could, though his talents lay more with biology than hacking. He was in the midst of double-checking a suspicious transaction log when Zalna abruptly stood from her console, one hand pressed to her stomach. Her face had gone a shade paler, and tiny beads of sweat glistened on her forehead. "Zalna," Adam said quietly, concern prickling at him. "Are you feeling okay?" She swallowed, nodding almost too quickly. "I'm fine, just a wave of dizziness." But the tremor in her voice belied the reassurance. Dr. Lee glanced over curiously. "Might be stress or dehydration." "We have water if you need it." Zalna forced a smile, taking the offered cup. She sipped, her gaze darting to Adam, then flicking away. Adam felt an uneasy ripple in his gut. This wasn't the first time he'd noticed her looking queasy in the last 2 days. Once in Arkin's workshop, she'd hidden it swiftly by turning away. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Zalna, if something's wrong, if you're injured from the tower attack." "I'm not injured," she whispered, her expression conflicted. "I need to speak with you in private once we finish here." His heart stuttered at her tone, but he simply nodded. By tacit agreement, they refocused on their tasks. Hours passed, broken by the hum of data scans and hushed conversation. At last, Dr. Lee declared that they had enough information to connect Crane's shell companies to the mercenaries hired to assault the Spire. It wasn't an ironclad case, but it was strong evidence. "That should be sufficient," Dr. Lee said, rubbing her eyes. "The Council can't ignore a direct line of funding. If we combine this with sworn statements from the tower residents." Dr. Malhotra nodded. "We'll present it to the magistrate tomorrow morning. Crane will face formal inquiry." Adam's shoulders sagged with relief, partially. If the inquiry proceeded, they'd have legal recourse, but Crane might still launch a challenge. The lingering tension in Zalna's gaze hadn't lifted either. "You two get some rest," Dr. Lee told them. "We'll stay here overnight, safeguard the data. The archives are secure." Without argument, Adam and Zalna left the annex for a smaller lounge area, where a row of padded benches overlooked a glass floor panel showing the library levels below. Monitors looped silent tutorials on data crystal usage overhead. Finding a quiet corner, Zalna sank down on a bench. Adam followed, sitting beside her. The tension in her posture was unmistakable. Shoulders taut, fingers twining restlessly. Anxiety coursed through him. "Zalna, whatever's troubling you, tell me," he urged softly. She took a breath, lifting her gaze to meet his. "Adam," she whispered, voice raw, "I'm pregnant." In that moment, everything seemed to freeze. Adam's pulse thundered in his ears. Pregnant, he echoed, barely forming the word. Zalna nodded, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Yes, I confirmed it the morning after the raid. I'm carrying your child. A wild mix of emotions erupted within him. Shock, fear, an unanticipated swell of joy. That's incredible, he managed, reaching for her hands. Are you all right? Is the baby? She squeezed his fingers, tears spilling freely now. I'm all right, but Adam, do you realize what this means for us? Kalori don't often conceive with humans. There are no protocols, no guarantee of acceptance from either side. He swallowed, a fierce protectiveness flaring in his chest. Then we'll find a way, he said firmly. We'll figure it out. Together. But her expression brimmed with worry. Crane will see this as the ultimate insult. That I left him a Kalori only to conceive with a human. He won't stop until he's forced to. She glanced at her abdomen, eyes shining. And I want our child safe. Safe from his wrath, from all this conflict. Adam pulled her into a gentle embrace, his heart hammering. I'm not letting him or anyone harm you or our baby. I swear it. She buried her face against his shoulder. Oh, Adam, I don't want to be the cause of more violence. But if he demands a duel, I might not have a choice but to accept it, or watch you do so. Kalori tradition can be merciless. Adam stroked her hair, mind reeling. A child. Their child. Every protective instinct roared to life, but overshadowing it was sheer awe. Whatever happens, he murmured, we stand together, you, me, and our baby, our family. Zalna pressed her forehead to his, and they stayed wrapped in each other's arms, hearts pounding in unison. For the first time, the fight with Crane felt more personal and more vital than any challenge Adam had ever faced. Now it wasn't just about survival. It was about protecting the future growing within Zalna, the life they had unknowingly created. They didn't get much rest. The looming threat of a formal challenge haunted them, and Adam remained on edge throughout the night. Sure enough, just past dawn, the archive's main hall erupted with a commotion. Kalori security officers and city officials poured in, surrounding a tall figure whose robe bore the filigree of council status. Crane. He stalked through the hushed corridors like a predator, lesser clerks and librarians scattering before him. A hush fell when he reached the annex. Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra tensed, guarding the data terminal behind them. Adam and Zalna, alerted by the alarmed faces of the librarians, hurried over. Crane was striking to behold. Turquoise skin of a deeper hue, angular features, and an imperious posture are accentuated by lines of gold across his temple ridges. His dark, gleaming eyes landed on Zalna, and a contemptuous sneer curled his lips. So, Crane said in a resonant baritone, you have consorted with an off-worlder, Zalna. I did not believe the rumors at first, but this, he raked his gaze over Adam, brimming with disdain. This is low, even for you. Zalna's jaw tightened. You have no right to judge my life, Crane. We ended long ago. Crane stepped forward, ignoring Dr. Lee's protest. You dare stand against me in the council, attempt to defame me with accusations of a mercenary raid? Slander, all of it. Yet here you are, creeping through data files like criminals. Adam's anger flared. We have evidence linking you to the tower attack, he said, voice trembling with cold fury. Stop hiding behind your influence. A ripple of tension spread among Crane's retinue. Several armed guards fanned out. Crane regarded Adam with a predatory glint. Evidence, is it? I see no court convened. The Kalori Code states that those who bring false accusations must prove them in an official hearing. Zalna raised her chin. Then let's have that hearing. Crane's mouth twisted into a mockery of a grin. Not before we settle a matter of personal honor. He lifted an ornate staff, tapping it on the crystal floor. I invoke Korath Shal, the ancient duel of retribution. You, Adam Rayner, stand accused of seducing my former mate and tarnishing my name. Face me in combat or forfeit any claim to your so-called evidence. Adam's blood ran cold. This was exactly what Dr. Malhotra had warned him about. A formal challenge, recognized by Kalori tradition, but rarely used in modern times. Refusal meant ceding moral high ground, allowing Crane to paint them as cowards and liars. Acceptance meant standing toe-to-toe with a powerful official and risking everything. Zalna's eyes flared with panic. She gripped Adam's arm. "Don't do this," she whispered. "He's trained in dueling arts. He could kill you." Crane's mocking laugh echoed. "What's the matter? Your human lover too fragile for Kalori tradition?" A spark of defiance ignited in Adam. Over Crane's shoulder, he saw Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra, both tense, seemingly powerless to intervene. He glanced at Zalna, recalling her confession of pregnancy, the need to ensure their child's future was safe. Fear warred with resolve. With a steadying breath, Adam stepped forward. "I accept," he said, voice ringing in the hushed space. "But if I win, you leave Zalna alone, forever. You acknowledge our evidence publicly." Crane's grin was all predatory satisfaction. "Agreed. We'll settle this at the Arena of Lights by sundown tomorrow. The council will witness it." Zalna made a strangled sound of protest, but Crane and his guards swept out in a flurry of robes and hushed whispers. Adam stood there, heart pounding, half in shock at what he'd just done. He felt Zalna's trembling hand slip into his. For a moment the world faded and he turned to her, gently pressing their foreheads together. "I'm sorry," he murmured, "but I had to. I won't let him destroy our lives." Tears glimmered in Zalna's eyes. "We'll find a way," she whispered. "I just hope that way doesn't cost you your life." The following day was a blur of hurried planning and anxious strategizing. Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra worked furiously to finalize their presentation of incriminating files, hoping to place the data in the hands of the more impartial council members. Zalna and Adam sought any advantage they could for the duel. She taught him the rudimentary principles of Kalori staff combat, how to hold, pivot, and parry in the style favored by her people. They managed to secure an hour in a small training chamber near the archives. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Zalna demonstrated a series of sweeping arcs with a borrowed staff, eyes narrowed in concentration. Adam attempted to mimic her movements, though he stumbled more than once, his nerves on edge. "You need to keep your core balanced," Zalna instructed, placing her hands over his to adjust his grip. Kalori duelists exploit an opponent's imbalance. Adam exhaled a shaky breath. "I'm trying," he muttered, frustration gnawing at him. He had some baseline training in self-defense from his younger days, but nothing like this. The staff felt alien in his hands. Zalna's expression softened. "You have heart, Adam. Courage. Crane may be formidable, but he underestimates you." He paused, letting the staff rest at his side. "Zalna, if something goes wrong, if I can't beat him," she placed a finger to his lips. "No, we don't speak that into being. But if it happens, I won't let him harm you further. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you and our child." Emotion clogged Adam's throat. He tugged her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "I never dreamed I'd come to an alien world, fall in love, and create a new life, only to face a life-or-death duel with your ex." Despite the gravity, a brittle laugh escaped Zalna. "Kalori, romance can be complicated," she said wryly, though tears glimmered in her eyes. They resumed the training, each passing minute feeling like a countdown to a fate they could scarcely fathom. But at last, the time came. The Arena of Lights, a massive circular coliseum formed of overlapping crystal panels, awaited them, lit by the twin suns. When they arrived, the stands were already filling with spectators, council members, curious citizens, and even off-world observers. Word of the ancient duel's invocation had spread quickly. Adam's legs felt like lead as he followed Zalna into the wide corridor leading to the central battleground. Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra stood waiting near an official dais. Dr. Lee squeezed Adam's shoulder in silent support, while Dr. Malhotra muttered, "Remember your footwork. Kalori staff fighting is about angles." Zalna gave Adam a final, desperate embrace. "I believe in you," she whispered against his ear, her hands settling over his heart. "Fight for us, for our child." He nodded, swallowing past the knot in his throat. Then he stepped into the arena, a hush rippling through the crowd. Crane stood at the opposite edge, adorned in ceremonial robes of midnight blue and gold, a tall staff held with practiced ease. His expression was one of smug confidence. A council official, draped in ornate sashes, stepped between them. By our laws, the duel of Korath shall commences. Both parties have agreed to abide by its outcome. Let no dishonor taint these grounds. The official withdrew, leaving Adam and Crane facing each other across the gleaming floor. Adam tightened his grip on his staff, glancing up at the canopy of translucent panels overhead that reflected the suns, sending shards of rainbow light dancing. The beauty contrasted sharply with the brutal business at hand. Crane smirked. You should have stayed out of Calori affairs, human. I'll give you one last chance to walk away. Forfeit. Adam's gaze flicked to Zalna in the stands, her hands clasped protectively near her abdomen. Courage stirred in him like an ember fanned to flame. Never, Bia, he said quietly. Crane's smirk vanished. With a fluid motion, he lunged, staff whirling in a deadly arc, and the battle began. Adam barely dodged Crane's first strike, the force of the blow whistling past his ear. His heart thundered, adrenaline surging. He countered with a horizontal swing aimed at Crane's midsection, but the Calori official easily sidestepped, using a graceful pivot that nearly swept Adam's feet out from under him. Every movement felt magnified under the gaze of the assembled crowd. Crystals embedded in the arena's walls responded to the energy of the combat, flashing in pulses of red and gold. The hush of onlookers gave way to murmurs of excitement and a harsh commentary from Crane's supporters who jeered Adam's novice moves. But Adam was nothing if not determined. He focused on the principles Zalna had drilled into him. Keep balanced, eyes on the opponent, anticipate shifts in stance. Crane attacked again, a series of swift jabs that rattled Adam's staff. Pain jolted Adam's arms. He grit his teeth, twisting to avoid a crippling blow, and somehow managed to turn defense into offense, hooking Crane's staff with his own. For a split second, Crane's eyes flickered with surprise. Adam seized the chance, driving the staff forward. The impact clipped Crane's shoulder, staggering him. A collective gasp rippled through the stands. Encouraged, Adam pressed his advantage, swinging again, only to be met with a flash of motion. Crane recovered, deflecting with a powerful parry that reverberated through Adam's entire body. You're not half bad, Crane remarked, voice tight with exertion, for an under-evolved species. Anger flared in Adam. You're worse than I expected for a so-called master duelist, he shot back, though his breath came in ragged gulps. Crane's response was a flurry of strikes so rapid that Adam could only block. The Calori official was done playing. Adam barely managed to avoid a blow to his temple by ducking at the last second, but the follow-up strike caught his calf. He cried out, stumbling as pain flared hot in his leg. He rolled away, ignoring the jolt through his muscles, staff slipping from his grasp for a split second. A hush of dread filled Adam's mind. If Crane seized that opening, it could be over. Yet in that heartbeat, Adam recalled something Zalna once said, Calori can be undone by an unexpected tactic. With no time to reclaim the staff, Adam swung his leg in a desperate sweep, hooking Crane's ankle. Crane, not anticipating a lower body counter, toppled sideways with a grunt. In the confusion, Adam scrambled to his feet, retrieving his staff with trembling hands. The crowd erupted in urgent shouts, half cheering, half exclaiming in shock. A flicker of real concern crossed Crane's face as he rose, leveling a venomous glare at Adam. You'll pay for that, he snarled, lunging again. The duel blurred into raw survival. Adam blocked and struck, ignoring the protest from his injured calf. Each clang of the staves resonated like thunder in the amphitheater's crystal walls. Sweat drenched Adam's brow, and the air filled with the tang of ozone from the friction of Calori technology embedded in the staff handles. Across the arena, Adam glimpsed Zalna in the stands, lips parted in silent prayer. The thought of her, and of the child growing within her, fueled him. Summoning what strength remained, he parried Crane's next blow and countered with a thrust aimed at the Calori official's center of mass. This time, the strike connected cleanly, knocking the wind out of Crane. He staggered back, staff clattering from his grip. Adam, chest heaving, advanced, staff raised for a final blow. Crane locked eyes with him, wounded pride flickering in his gaze. The crowd fell deathly silent as Adam hovered there, staff poised to deliver the deciding strike. Every fiber of him trembled. He wanted to avenge Zalna, to protect her and their unborn child from this man's tyranny. And yet, Adam lowered the staff. "Yield," he rasped. "We don't have to do this." Crane spat on the floor, hatred twisting his features. But custom bound him. He was disarmed and pinned. With a furious snarl, he dipped his head. "I yield," he ground out. In that instant, the crowd erupted in cheers. Officials rushed in to formalize the duel's conclusion. Adam's legs nearly buckled from relief. He limped forward until Zalna reached him, throwing her arms around his neck. She sobbed against him, her relief palpable. He pulled her close, heart thudding with residual adrenaline. "It's over," he whispered, though he still half expected Crane's goons to attack. But the man stood there, shoulders trembling, forced to accept the humiliating outcome. Zalna pressed her forehead to Adam's. "You did it," she breathed, tears shimmering in her eyes. "We're free." In the aftermath, the council officially recognized Adam's victory and sealed Crane's yield. Publicly, he was compelled to disavow any claims on Zalna. Furthermore, under intense scrutiny from the proof Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra presented, Crane's secret mercenary funding was laid bare. The council, outraged by his rogue actions, stripped him of many privileges and launched a formal investigation. With Crane's influence winning and the truth exposed, Zalna found herself finally able to breathe. She and Adam were free to plan their future, no longer haunted by sabotage or the threat of covert attacks. But the city still buzzed with whispers of their unusual union, especially after rumors spread that Zalna carried a half-human child. Though many Kalori greeted the news with intrigue rather than hostility, viewing it as a rare phenomenon that might broaden their species' understanding, others remained wary. Biological differences could pose health risks or cultural complications. Some older council members muttered about crossing lines that nature never intended. Adam, determined to protect Zalna and the baby, discussed possibilities with Dr. Lee and Dr. Malhotra. Traveling to Earth's advanced medical facilities seemed wise, providing them with prenatal care that accounted for the hybrid pregnancy. Zalna, for her part, was torn. She loved her homeworld deeply, but recognized that remaining might put undue stress on them all. Ultimately, they chose to depart Nola 4. Dr. Lee arranged a consortium-funded transport, ensuring they could leave discreetly. Arkin promised to watch over Zalna's property and guard her interests in the city in case they chose to return someday. While Adam packed what few belongings they salvaged from the wrecked apartment, Zalna quietly said goodbye to the spire. Though it lay partially collapsed from the raid, shards of it still stood, glinting in the sunlight, a testament to the dangers they had faced and overcome. On the day of their departure, they gathered at a small spaceport near the research district. The hovercraft Arkin had lent them was returned with thanks, and a sleek shuttle awaited them on the landing pad. In the distance, the crystalline skyline of the city shimmered one last time under the twin suns. Zalna tightened her grip on Adam's hand as they boarded. She wore a gentle, bittersweet smile. "We're really leaving," she murmured. "I've never traveled so far from home. But for our child." Adam pressed a light kiss to her temple. "It's for the best, and Earth can be beautiful, Zalna. Blue oceans, green forests. I can't wait to show you all of it." As the shuttle thrusters roared to life, the craft lifting them into the dusky sky, Adam gazed out the window at the receding towers of Nola 4. The path ahead was uncharted, but it brimmed with possibility, a future where he, Zalna, and their soon-to-be child could find acceptance, build a life that honored both their worlds, and maybe even forge a new understanding between humans and Kalori. When the shuttle cleared the planet's atmosphere, stars filled the viewport, an endless canvas of cosmic potential. Zalna nestled against Adam, one hand resting protectively over her abdomen. Their hearts beat in tandem, united by love, hope, and a shared promise that transcended species or tradition. And so they journeyed onward, leaving behind the echoes of a vengeful ex-lover, the wreckage of a shattered spire, and the swirl of rumor that surrounded their interspecies bond. In its place, they carried only the brilliance of their devotion and the quiet certainty that together they had overcome darkness and would continue to do so, no matter what wonders or trials awaited them in the vast, starry expanse ahead. Looking back on this tale, I can't help but feel a surge of optimism. Adam's courage and devotion show that even the seemingly impossible, a human and a Kalori forging a life together, can become a reality when fueled by loyalty and love. In the end, their resilience shattered the chains of jealousy and fear, proving that unity is stronger than any dual or social barrier. Now, as Adam and Zalna look toward a brighter horizon, the promise of their growing family stands as a testament to hope in the face of adversity. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed the story, please share your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. We'd love to hear your opinions and continue the discussion. Your insights make our storytelling community stronger. Remember to like and subscribe for even more exciting adventures.